So I've been thinking a lot lately about what the future for handmade sellers is. And I have some thoughts, so I thought I would make this podcast about that. And if you watch my last podcast episode, which FYI, hello, I'm Kim, this is the Coffee and Craft podcast, if you weren't aware. In my last episode, I was talking all about having no sales and the things that could be causing that at the moment. Some of those things being within our control, some of them not so much. And this is sort of linked because I think one of the niches that's really experiencing the squeeze on sales at the moment is the handmade niche, which is, FYI, the one that I'm in. It's fun. So you'd think I'd be worried, and I am, but it's also a controlled worry, if that makes sense, because I think the things that we are seeing now are things that I have seen before, and I am confident that I can survive this, whatever this is. But I do think we are going to come out changed, and I thought I'd make a podcast episode about that. So if you're new here, as this is a podcast episode, it's going to be a very rambly one. These are designed so that people can have a coffee or just have it running in the background as they work. And also the topic of this podcast was heavily influenced by my last video, which was the trend report. And I thought it's very easy for me to keep on rocking up and criticize the Etsy trend reports. I mean, to be honest, they do make it very easy to do that. But what if I was to make some kind of a trend report and put myself out there, open for criticism? Well, this isn't a trend report, but it will be interesting to see if any of my predictions are even close in a year or two from now. Okay, well, I've made a list. You can't see it, it's in front of me. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 predictions that I think will come to a head over the next, well, mainly the next year, but there is one in particular that there is no timeline on because I don't know. These are just gut instincts and nothing more than my own personal opinion and what ifs. But it could be fun to return to in the future and see just how close or how far off I was. Anyway, I digress already. It's going to be a good episode. Prediction number 1, and this might be surprising to some of you, but I think Etsy still has a part to play now and will continue to do so in the future. And I say that despite it being one of the hardest platforms to sell on as a handmade seller. And the irony of that remark is not lost on me. But I do still think that it is going to continue to have a part to play in the year to come. It is still a place where you can get organic sales if you know what you're doing on the platform. If you're not expecting to just be able to rock up, not put too much effort into your listing and just expect the views and the sales to roll in. It doesn't work that way. Etsy is definitely not a place for passive income. I know it has been sold to many as being a platform that is good for that. And I suppose over the pandemic years, for a little while, it kind of was, because it wasn't a platform that was as saturated as it is with that kind of seller or item. Also, a lot of people were online spending money that they had to alleviate boredom. So it did turn into a get-rich-quick paradise for a little while for some passive income bros. You know the type. So while organic sales and even organic traffic can be difficult to come by on Etsy, if you know what you're doing, it definitely is something that you can build on and make use out of. And there are a couple of other things that make me think that Etsy are going to have a part to play going forward, even for handmade sellers, vintage sellers the like. I can't shift the feeling that things are going to get more difficult for resellers and drop shippers alike. Now, I've sat down and I've really tried to think about exactly why I feel this, because Etsy's awash with it. And it's not just Etsy, they're everywhere. So why do I feel that it is going to be harder for them and that some of them may fall by the wayside? Simply put, I think it's going to be down to a case of maybe buyer fatigue. It will get to a point where buyers are sick and tired of buying stuff and getting tat, because a lot of the items that you see, not just on Etsy, but anywhere online, it will be a lovely, like you might see this mug and you might think that you will get a mug that looks like this. And then when you get it, you get a kind of a a poorer quality copy of this, and then you think, well, it's kind of the same but very different. And people are going to get sick and tired of that. And so they're going to stop buying from any shop that appears to be selling cheap junk. Especially when you could just go to a shop in your nearest town and buy something just as generic, but slightly better quality for as cheap. And you won't have to wait for it. So I think that's I do feel in my heart that that is going to happen. And I think it's going to be more of a case of buyer behavior leading that change, as opposed to anything that the platforms might do or the sellers or anything else. How long it's going to take for that to happen, I have no idea. I don't think it's going to be within the next year. Yeah, I'm not going to, I have no idea, and I don't know to what extent that this is going to happen. I certainly don't think we're going to wake up a year, 2 years from now and find a platform like Etsy completely free of resellers and dropshippers, because I've been on there since 2007 and they have been on there since at least as long as that, if not sooner. I mean, I joined when Etsy was only 2 years old, a mere baby. So if they couldn't get a handle on it then, when it was such a tiny platform, they're always going to be there. That's just fact. But I do feel like buyer behavior changes every 2 years or so. And while I can't predict what buyer behavior will be a year, 2 years from now, I do think that this economic situation that we seem to be globally going through, I do think that's going to have an impact and change the way we buy things. I think that's going to hurt the dropshippers, the get-rich-quickers, you know, the passive income bros, as well as the rest of us. Oh no. I just hope that it doesn't hurt the rest of us as much in the meantime. I do think that for handmade sellers, if we pay attention to this, really pay attention, we can take advantage of this, but we need to be on it, and we are going to have to be willing to evolve with things as well. I say this as a handmade seller because I do think that we are going to have to focus less perhaps on physical handmade products, or at least be willing to pivot our businesses, it's been a while, into products that are perhaps different to what we usually sell. I'll give you a bit more of an example because that was a bit wishy-washy. So last year, many of you may know that I was going through a bit of a hard and fast pivot. And you'll know why I inwardly cringe when I say that word out loud now. The reason being, I started to realize that finished handmade products on Etsy were, you know, the sales were slowing down. And I started to think that people were starting to want to do things more themselves. And so perhaps if I started selling supplies, my own niche, incidentally, is hand embroidery. So if I was to sell things that allowed other people to embroider something themselves, it would do better than, say, just focusing on finished products. So I don't know. I don't have a hoop to hand, but imagine that there's an art piece in that hoop. I would probably sell just the hoops as a supplies thing more than the finished artwork. Does that make sense? Not that I wouldn't sell the finished artwork, but the sales of the finished artwork would be fewer and far between, whereas the sales of the hoops for other people to embroider in, on, use, would be a little more consistent. Hence the pivot. That was when I introduced my stick and stitch patches. I could have also have bought in hoops, for example, fabric, scissors, needles, you know, other things that you need for embroidery, and sold those as supplies. I didn't go that far because I don't want to. I have my limits. I don't want to turn into a supply shop. But as far as stick and stitch patches, which are, it's the fabric stabilizer that I can print my designs on, and then I can sell my embroidery designs. And there's still an element of creativity there because I design my designs. So it's still fun for me, is what I'm trying to say. And this is what I mean by having to be a bit more open to change and perhaps evolving the things that we make. And I also mentioned this in my previous video about not having sales. Sometimes it's our products, and we always have to focus on what buyer behavior currently is and isn't, because it's ever evolving and it seems to go through changes every 2 to 3 years or so. It's important that what we were doing last year, the year before, we're not just stuck on that, but constantly looking to see what we might need to evolve into. That can be really painful because many of us get into this because we want to do a certain thing. We don't want to move on out of it, and that's when we can come up against problems. As a seller, I've been running my business for 10 years, and I've been doing it full time for how long? 5? 6. But I've only been able to do that because I have evolved all the time. And I say it like that because I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes I don't want to. But if you want to stay in business, it's an annoying part of it, I'm afraid. It sucks. But on saying that, I will say, before I started my business in employment, even my job as an employed person within the same company would evolve over time. So I guess what I'm saying is evolution in your job is inevitable. Embrace it. I know, I'm so helpful. So 3 predictions there. Etsy is going to continue to have a part to play for handmade sellers. Things will get gradually harder for resellers and dropshippers. Granted, that just could be wishful thinking, but I'm sticking with it. And number 3, oh yes, us handmade makers and designers are going to have to evolve. The next thing is that we are also going to have to not stick to one platform. We're going to have to cover our bases over multiple platforms. Easy for me to say. When I started my business, I was on Etsy and Etsy alone, and it was great until it wasn't. That was probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my business, was just putting all of my eggs into the Etsy basket. You do need to spread your eggs out. And this can be really beneficial because if you have one item and you try it out on multiple platforms, it can be quite surprising which platforms they get traction on over others. And you can use marketplace platforms like eBay or Etsy, Amazon, whatever. But you can also have your own website. You can use social media. TikTok you can sell on, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, like I do here. Just make a list of all of the places that you could theoretically sell your stuff on, and weed it down to the ones that would work for you and your business and your audience. Audience, just key all the time. I should make another video about that. I digress. I mean, that one's not really a prediction. Oh my gosh, I'm being like Etsy. I'm going to cover my back and say that it's going to become even more of a thing than it already is. But it is definitely a thing. You no longer just focus on the one thing. And I'm not just talking about Etsy now. If you've only ever sold on eBay, spread yourself out. If you've only ever sold on social media, spread yourself out. If you have the budget for it, get yourself a website, build it up. I know the initial building of it is painful, but oh, it's so worth it. As you can tell, I'm a fan. It is a lot of work. You do have to make sure that you are bringing in consistent sales because it's expensive. But if you are at that point in your journey, in your business, it's a must. So I'll move on. But yes, in short, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Spread your eggs out. Okay? Okay. I'm reluctant to say this because every time I mention something like this, you guys don't like it. So I'm about to ruin your day. I'm going to read it. Video content will be the main way to get seen and grow. This is more of the same, really. This is probably as true now as it will be a year from now. But video content is going nowhere. The video content itself is evolving, but the fact that there is an umbrella of video content on every single platform that you look at, any kind of social media, YouTube, Pinterest, which a lot of people use for their businesses, video, Video is not going anywhere, and that is a horrible, horrible thing to face if you hate making videos. But if you want to run a business online, it's one of the things that you need to embrace. I don't make short form content, but I don't need to because I have this YouTube channel. I make long form content. It's still a video. And should I ever wish to go down the short form video content route, these videos, I can chop them down to smaller segments and post these. So my point is that it doesn't have to be short form if you don't want it to be. It can be longer form. You could start a podcast, a video podcast. It appears to be the main way that new businesses, existing businesses, can get found online and also grow their community, their audience, and their customer base. There's no nice way of saying that. That is just the way it is. That's going to peeve some people off who are really not into video content. I understand it's not for everyone. But if you are open to trying new things online and you are hell-bent on making your business work and turning it into a viable business, video content of some description has to be a part of that. I mean, think of all of the YouTubers that you follow here. They might have websites, shops, businesses of their own that you buy from. You found them because they're doing video content. They're growing because they do video content. Okay, I will stop there. I will stop. I'm just saying. It's going to become even more important than it already is, and it's already very important. So I'll stop talking about that now. We'll move on to the last one. We're nearly there. Okay, the last one, again, not for everyone, me. Markets and shows are going to continue to be an ever-growing way to bring in income to your handmade business, vintage business, etc. It already was, but then of course the pandemic seemed to knock it on its head, and there is an element to buyers getting sick and tired of having to buy things online. And as handmade sellers, in fact, as any kind of seller, if you're a print on demand or a digital download seller and you're thinking that this video has nothing to do with you, even this part does. And that is that there is an element I've noticed that people are a bit sick and tired of buying online, which when your business is online is a bit problematic. Apart from them being a great way to bring in an extra income stream during the quiet times online, or the times that are traditionally quiet online, like summer, if you are building a community online, it is a great way for your customers to get to meet you and get to see your things one-on-one that they don't get to do online. Also, not everybody is chronically online. Some people are also, it's not just their buying habits that are changing online, it's also just their user habits, their online habits in general are changing. So I think this is another way or another reason why doing shows and markets, providing you're doing the right ones, could be a really big deal, especially going forward into the future. I do remember before the pandemic, a few friends saying that they were finding markets and shows to be less and less of a viable option for them. I don't know if that was because people didn't have the same fatigue buying online as they seem to. And when I say they, this is a huge generalization, and it's just a sort of feeling I'm getting and have done now for a little while, where people are almost, I can't think of the term that I would use. They're a little bit tapped out with being online. I mean, don't get me wrong, the internet's going nowhere. Buying online is going nowhere. Being online, spending time online, it's going nowhere. But I do think over the last few years, we've peaked a little bit. And I think for a little while at least, if not maybe even a little bit longer, our behavior online, or rather our relationship with it, is going to change. And that's obviously going to have an impact with buying and selling online. Online. How many times can I say that word in a minute? So I do think if you include a physical, one-on-one, real-life selling experience into your repertoire, it could be a good thing. I mean, she says, the idea of selling one-on-one and being just no. there is a reason why I built my business online introverted, which is a shame because I'm not going to lie, I would absolutely love to do shows and markets. I've only done a few markets in the past and it was a weird one. I simultaneously loved them and hated every minute of it. I've said it in the past and I'll say it again, squirrels all over the place. I'm just accepting it at this point. But for everybody else whose head is not full of squirrels, it could be a good thing. In short, going forward, handmade sellers are going to have to embrace change. Online is going to continue to change, but the reselling and the drop shipping and all of that, it's not going anywhere. I do think things are going to change for that niche. Do we dare give them a niche of their own? Get rich quick bros, you know, that niche. I do feel in my gut that things are going to be changing for that lot as well. To what extent and how much we will benefit from it, I don't know. We could do if we pay attention, as I say, but I do believe that we are going to get the most if we ourselves evolve too. And that means being very fluid with what we sell and also being open to not just selling physical finished items, but perhaps playing to the galleries a little bit too. I do think that as annoying as it is, in order to build an online business of any kind, you have to embrace the role of a content creator. Yep, it sucks. It's not what most of us got into business for, but that is the reality right now, and I don't think that's going anywhere. I just feel that that's the direction that we're heading in, and there's no indication of us turning around anytime soon. And we're just going to have to be more flexible with the platforms and the places that we sell on, and perhaps embrace the markets and shows if we financially can do, and like me, we want to, or not, as the case may be. And because I continuously give Etsy such a hard time with their trend reports, what I'm going to do a year from now, I'm going to revisit this video and I'm going to criticize myself. Well, I hope I won't have to too much, but I'm going to critique my own prediction episode. Oh God, what am I doing? I'm trying to add a little bit of balance is what I'm trying to do. All right, let me know if you agree with any of these. Do you have any that you would add that I may have forgotten? I'd be really interested to hear it. Let's do this. And I did mention my last podcast episode a couple of times in this video, where I talked about why you might be experiencing fewer sales at the moment. It is here if you would like to see that. And I will hopefully see you there. Ta-ta.